So I've used Fiverr before to hire people to mix and master my songs, and typically I can get really good results. And the cool thing about Fiverr is that you can pretty much find someone within your budget. However, there's one big drawback that I found with using Fiverr that has caused me to kind of look somewhere else to find people to mix and master my music. So in this video, I'm going to talk about what that is. So historically for me, Fiverr has been a really good way to find talent to mix and master my songs. And truth be told, I usually try to mix and master on my own, but I do acknowledge that is one of the areas where I do have some deficits. And so if I can't get a mix to sound quite as good as I want, then I'll fork over the money to have someone mix and master my songs. And so I've done that with Fiverr, and I've spent probably $100 to $150 per track, and usually I get really good results. The problem with Fiverr is that it is a very transactional thing. And so what I mean by that is you never really build any kind of connection with the person who is mixing and mastering your songs. You are just a number to them. You are just, a dollar sign to them. And yes, they will probably, depending on the person, take a lot of care into making sure that your song is sounding radio ready and sounding amazing, but you're never going to really build a connection with them because you never really chat with them other than just sending them what your song is. And so with that, it's a very isolationist experience because you aren't really building any connections with anyone. You're just doing this transactional thing. And so for me, I actually pivoted out of using Fiverr for hiring mixing engineers. And I actually found a local mixing engineer to help mix and master a recent song that I did. And I think there's a couple major benefits with finding a local mixing engineer, and at least in the scenario that I was in. So I found there's a studio near me in Richmond called Good People Studio. And so I reached out to them to help mix and master one of my songs. And so I found by doing that process, there were a couple key things that made me really like it. So the first thing is that I was actually able to sit in on the session and watch Swami, who's the music producer and mixing engineer. I could see him, how he mixes and masters my song. I can see what plugins he uses. I can see what EQ and compression tactics that he uses. It was very just eye-opening, and to see his process really helped me in the future to be able to mix and master my own songs. But not only that, I think just on a broader spectrum, I think one of the big benefits of finding someone local to mix and master your songs, or just to work with another local musician in general, is that you just get to build your network. And I know that term gets thrown around a lot, build your network, and honestly, it can be a little nefarious depending on how people do it, because a lot of people will say build your network so that you can, leverage it and basically weaponize building a network. But in my mind, building a network is just trying to meet new friends that have a common interest as you. And so by doing what I did, I get that I'm not necessarily meeting a friend because I'm paying for this person to be in the studio. But in any case, I am sort of forging a connection with this person, and doing so at least at a much greater scale than what I could do in Fiverr, because it's not like you have any communication with any of the mixing engineers in Fiverr. I mean, you can write them notes to let you know what you want revised, I guess, but you're not like sitting with them. You're not chatting with them. You're not getting to know them as a person. And so when you sit in a studio with someone for 3 hours, you can kind of get a sense of who these people are just as humans. And I think it's good to be able to do that. Music production can be a very isolated experience. And so I think that any opportunity where you can meet other people in the industry is just very valuable. And so whether or not that's paying for time in a studio where you're working with an engineer or some other vocalist, or if you have a community of musicians. And certainly where I live, there was a community of musicians where I could go and interact with people. It has since sort of shut down. But finding things like that can be a really good way to just sort of spark creativity and just not feel so alone in a hobby or industry where it can often just be very isolating, like I said. So I know that every city is going to be different, and not every city is going to have availability of local mixing engineers or other talent that you might need for your songs. But I do think that if you have the ability to do that, if you have the budget, if you have the accessibility, then I think that it is very worthwhile to try to find local talent to help with your songs, whether you need a local guitarist, a local bassist, or like me, you need a local mixing and mastering engineer. I think doing that just allows you to forge connections in your area and could potentially lead to other opportunities to meet other people. And certainly that necessarily hasn't happened for me yet, because I've only worked with the mixing engineer once, but it is something that I want to do again. And I think that it's just good to be in a space that is designed for music and allows you to just create with other people instead of just always being, by myself in my own home studio doing my thing. So I think there still are places for things like Fiverr, because frankly, there are people who don't really care about forging connections, and there's nothing wrong with that if that's not your thing. But I think a lot of times for having longevity and sort of a hobby or creative pursuit, it's good to have other people that do it, because you can bounce ideas off of each other and get inspiration from each other. And I think that there's an infinite amount of inspiration that you can get from other people. And if you're always in your own bubble, then you never really get those outside perspectives and those outside influences. So if you've never tried it before and you have the budget for it, I would recommend, if you're working on a song, just try it out. See if you have a local studio in your area and see if you can sit in with the mixing engineer and just see what they do. I mean, maybe not every mixing engineer would let you sit in with them, but I do think it's a good experience to not only get your song sounding really good, but it's also a good way just to learn the tools so that you can be able to better do it on your own. And so with that being said, I'm going to sort of close the video off here, but I will also add at the end of this video for the closing a song that was mixed and mastered by Swami, the producer at Good People Studio. So I hope you enjoy it. So stick around if you want to listen to that, but otherwise I will see you in the next video. Take care.